So we've got year 3 of Jaden Daniels at Arizona State, a player who immediately stepped onto the field and made an impression, had a lot of us excited with his freshman season. Then Arizona State had like so many of these teams, especially in the Pac-12, it was a little bit disjointed, man. It was tough. It wasn't really a coherent, like you can't connect the dots or the data points from Arizona State's season. They did finish 2-2. And so I think that when you're looking around, you've got a defense that played really well last year. You probably that are not drawn to any one of the wide receivers or skill position players, maybe being like, that's the guy. Maybe y'all are. Be curious to hear if you are. But when you've got the way that Arizona State has been recruiting, the way that that coaching staff has been doing player development, if you got Jaden Daniels, and if you got a really good defense, then you've got a chance to be able to win the Pac-12 South. And so I do think that this is, I mentioned Utah, and we were talking about this big group, like Arizona State could wind up in the Pac-12 title game very, very easily. So what has your attention for Arizona State this spring?
This is my Pac-12 South contender over Utah. Arizona State's 2020 season, throw it out. Means nothing to me. Like, this was a team that started late, had COVID hit at the very beginning of the year. So they played like the one game to open their season against USC. They lose 28-27. And then they're off for another month,
right,
because of COVID, before they're actually able to start playing again. So they only played 4 games. They had like 2 COVID disruptions during the season. They were missing players. Nothing that happened last year matters to me. What matters to me is that you have a strong argument for the best quarterback in the conference in Jaden Daniels. You're going to have a solid defense. Zach Hill came in as the offensive coordinator last year. Was not able to get anything put in because there was no spring practice. There was no summer practice. There really was barely any fall practice before the Pac-12 started, and then everything gets shut down. So now he's coming in with his offense. They actually have a chance to implement it. We saw Jaden Daniels in the limited time he did play take on more of an element with his legs to go with his arm. So he's more of a dual threat, which makes that offense a little more dynamic, a little scarier than it already was. I just look at this team, and I think that if there is any team that can really compete with USC to win the division that I feel the most confident about, it's the Sun Devils. I think this is, I'm probably going to be like a Sun Devil stan all season long.
Forks up.
I wouldn't hate it if you are. I love it. Like I've been rooting for Herm Edwards, Antonio Pierce, guys that worked with the ESPN, and talked to them once a week. They'd come on our show and love them. Like, and I think, hey, give them a chance was my message. But I do think, because most people were ripping it, like, what is happening? This is going to be an absolute disaster. And it's been far from that. It felt like last year was going to be the year that they would kind of come together. And then, of course, we know COVID happened. Jaden Daniels has been awesome. He protects the football. You mentioned the run game. They really did kind of go back to an emphasis more on the run, led the Pac-12 in rushing. They've been recruiting outstandingly well. Herm is a great motivator. Like, I do feel like this should be the year that they should push, although it's not my sleeper contender. I got one we still haven't talked about yet. So, but I do think like this kind of speaks to the wild nature of the Pac-12, and Chip was alluding to, you might have a bunch of teams that are kind of bunched up together with a similar record at the end of the season. But if one kind of can separate itself, win some of these close games, because Tom, you mentioned the USC game, like they should have won that game. Like that was a disastrous late game collapse. And if they didn't lose that game, they could have been easily, even with it, they could have won 4-0, because they could have won the UCLA game too. Like, and they crushed Arizona. We all saw that when Kevin Sumlin gets fired because of that game. Like they looked really good last year. It's just nobody appreciated it because it was a shortened season. So I'm bullish on this team too.
All right, you guys know me, I hate senselessly running the ball just because you're supposed to do it. But if you're going to run the ball 73% of the time on first down, at least be this damn good at it, because they really ran the heck out of the ball. Like I'll allow it if you are second nationally in rushing success rate, first in efficiency, first in explosiveness, first in opportunity rate created. Like that's pretty, yeah. Go ahead, just keep running that ball. That sounds great. How do they take the next step though? For me, they have to be a little bit better at receiver on the outside. They had problems throwing the ball last year. I think part of that too was like their pass protection relative. Like they were pretty damn good running the football, and they have good backs. Obviously, DeMonte's pretty nice, but man, they were like, what are they, 121st in havoc rate allowed? That's not something you typically see in a team that runs the football as good as they do. So their pass protection stuff last year was really a concern. And I think part of that was Jaden Daniels holding the ball to try to wait for some of these receivers to get open, and they didn't really get open. I like their tight ends. We'll see how much they're able to develop the guys they brought back at receiver, but you got to get some passing game there. The other thing is you talk about like the value of the run game. They were one of the worst run defenses in the whole country, and yet their defense overall was pretty damn good because they were so good at not allowing explosive passes. And we're seeing over and over again, that's kind of the differentiator, right? Like you can be sort of have all these red cells on your spreadsheet, but if that one's green, your overall defensive rating is going to be pretty damn good because you're forcing teams to drive on you. You're winning some balls and some battles in the red zone, playing red zone roulette. They did that, and they should be just as good this year in the back end, I think. I mean, Chase Lucas and Jack Jones are nasty. I guess my only real couple questions are offensive line, defensive line stopping the run, and then they got to find somebody at receiver.